The rain had stopped 2 hours ago, but the puddles on Thornhill Avenue were deep enough to swallow a car tire whole. Isabella Chen stood at the crosswalk, 6 months pregnant, one hand supporting her lower back, the other gripping a canvas bag filled with groceries from the corner market. She wore the same faded denim jacket she'd owned since college, maternity jeans from a charity shop, and sneakers that had seen better years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry except for the simple gold band on her right hand. Not her left. Never her left anymore. She was waiting for the pedestrian light when she heard the engine. A silver Maserati Quattroporte, the kind of car that cost more than most people's houses, accelerating down the street like it owned the road. Isabella recognized that car. She'd sat in it 100 times. She'd chosen the leather interior color. She'd been there the day Lucas Rodriguez bought it, celebrating his first $1 million property deal, back when she thought his success meant their success. The car aimed straight for the puddle beside her. Isabella saw it coming, but her pregnant body couldn't move fast enough. The impact was instant and brutal. A wall of muddy water, thick with oil and street filth, exploded over her entire body. It hit her face, her chest, soaked through her jacket to her skin. The worst part, the coldest part, drenched her pregnant belly, the freezing water seeping through fabric until it pressed against the place where her daughter was growing. Isabella gasped, stumbling backward, her grocery bag hitting the pavement. Oranges rolled into the gutter. Her hands flew instinctively to her stomach, protective, terrified, checking that the baby was okay even though she was soaking wet and covered in filth that smelled like sewage and rotting leaves. The Maserati stopped. The driver's window rolled down, smooth and expensive, and there he was, Lucas Rodriguez, 29 years old, sharp jawline, designer stubble, wearing a suit that cost 3,000 pounds. The man who'd promised her forever in a registry office 5 years ago. The man who told her she was broken when their son died. The man who'd called her useless, barren, a waste of his time. The man who had no idea that the woman standing in front of him, dripping with mud, was no longer Isabella Rodriguez. She was Isabella Ashford now, wife to James Ashford, daughter-in-law to William Ashford, the billionaire who owned the investment firm that held every single commercial loan, keeping Lucas's property empire alive. Lucas leaned out the window, and he was smiling, actually smiling, like this was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. "Isabella? Oh my God, is that really you?" His voice was pure delight, pure victory, like he'd just won something. Sitting in the passenger seat was Sienna Drake, blonde, 24, wearing sunglasses that cost more than Isabella's monthly salary when she was still teaching, Lucas's executive assistant, the woman Lucas had been sleeping with for the last year of their marriage, the woman Lucas had chosen over his wife. Sienna pulled her sunglasses down, looking Isabella up and down with barely concealed disgust. "Lucas, oh my God, is that her, your ex-wife?" "In the flesh," Lucas said, his eyes scanning Isabella's soaked body, lingering on her pregnant stomach with something between amusement and contempt. "Still shopping at corner markets, I see? Still dressing like you're broke. Some things never change, right, Bella?" Isabella couldn't speak. Her throat had closed. She just stood there, one hand on her belly, the other hanging uselessly at her side, watching the man who'd destroyed her enjoy her humiliation. Lucas's smile widened, sharp and cruel. "Wait. Are you actually pregnant?" Sienna gasped dramatically, her hand flying to her mouth. "No way, Lucas. I thought you said she couldn't." "I did," Lucas interrupted, his eyes never leaving Isabella's stomach. "The doctors told her she was basically infertile after the miscarriage, severe uterine damage. Her body couldn't handle the stress of carrying a pregnancy." He said it clinically, like he was discussing faulty plumbing. So either those doctors were lying, or some desperate
desperate idiot actually knocked up my barren ex-wife. The words hit Isabella like physical blows, her vision blurred, but not from the muddy water still dripping down her face, from the memories flooding back. The hospital room where she'd held their son, Mateo, born silent at 24 weeks. The way Lucas had stood at the foot of her bed, checking his phone, uncomfortable, unable to even look at their baby. The way he'd said, "These things happen, Isabella, we'll try again," like their son was a failed business deal. The way he'd used the word barren for 3 years afterwards, in arguments, in explanations to his family, in justifications for his affairs. "What do you expect me to do? My wife can't give me children. I'm 30 years old. I need an heir." Lucas leaned further out the window, his voice dropping to something designed to cut deep. "Does he know, Isabella? This guy who got you pregnant? Does he know your
body killed our son? That you're defective? That medical professionals literally told you that you couldn't carry a child to term?" Isabella's hands were shaking so badly she could barely keep them on her stomach. Her baby, her miracle baby the doctors said would never exist, was moving inside her. Little flutter kicks, like she was trying to comfort her mother. Isabella had named her Sophia, after her grandmother, after hope. "I mean, seriously," Lucas continued, revving his engine slightly. "What kind of man looks at a woman who already killed one baby and thinks, yeah, let's try that again? Is he stupid? Desperate? Or did you just not tell him?" Sienna was laughing now, high-pitched and cruel. "Lucas, stop. She looks miserable enough already." "Does she?" Lucas's eyes met Isabella's, and there was something in them that Isabella recognized from their marriage. Pleasure. He was enjoying this. "I think she looks exactly like what she is. Poor, ordinary, a woman nobody wanted until some fool settled for damaged goods." He revved the engine again, louder this time. "Good luck keeping that baby alive, Bella. We both know how that story ends. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. Their bodies reject it, like an infection." The Maserati peeled away, tire screeching, engine roaring like a victory cry. It splashed through another puddle, sending more filthy water onto the sidewalk. Lucas's laughter carried back through the open window, mixing with Sienna's giggles and the sound of expensive horsepower. Isabella stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. A teenager across the street had their phone out, filming. An elderly woman looked concerned but didn't approach. A businessman walked past quickly, avoiding eye contact, like Isabella's humiliation might be contagious. Isabella's entire body was shaking, not from cold, though the October air was biting against her wet clothes, from rage, from shame, from the voice in her head that still sometimes sounded like Lucas, telling her she was broken, useless, that she deserved this. Her phone was in her jacket pocket, somehow still dry. Her fingers left muddy prints on the screen as she pulled it out. She stared at the contact name, James, her husband, the man she'd married 8 months ago in a small ceremony in Edinburgh, the man who'd held her when she cried about Mateo, the man who'd been there at every doctor's appointment when they discovered, impossibly, that she was pregnant, the man who'd chosen her, all her broken pieces, and called them beautiful. The man who also happened to be James Ashford, son of William Ashford, heir to Ashford Capital, the private equity firm worth £8 billion, the firm that had just acquired majority stakes in 3 commercial mortgage companies that held Lucas Rodriguez's loans, all £560 million of them. But Lucas didn't know that. How could he? Isabella had kept her maiden name publicly. She still taught part-time at a primary school in Manchester. She didn't wear her engagement ring, a 3-carat diamond that belonged to James's grandmother, because it felt too ostentatious around 6-year-olds learning to read. She'd married James quietly, away from media attention, because she'd wanted something private, something sacred, something that belonged only to them. Lucas had no idea that the woman he'd just humiliated, the ex-wife he'd called broken and barren, now had the power to destroy everything he'd built with one phone call. Isabella pressed James's contact. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, love, how's the market trip? Did they have the oranges you wanted?" His voice was warm, concerned, the voice of a man who cared about oranges because his pregnant wife had been craving them for 3 days straight. "James," Isabella's voice cracked, "can you come get me?" The warmth disappeared, replaced with something sharp and alert. "What happened? Are you hurt? Is the baby okay?" "I'm fine. We're fine. Just something happened. I'm on Thornhill Avenue near the market. Can you just—" "I'm already in the car. Stay on the phone with me." 15 minutes later, a black Range Rover with tinted windows pulled up. Not James's usual car, his security detail. 2 men in dark suits stepped out first, scanning the street like they were protecting the Prime Minister. Then James emerged from the back seat. James Ashford was 31, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that made people notice him even when he wasn't trying. Dark hair, sharp blue eyes, the bearing of someone raised with wealth, but without arrogance. He wore jeans and a simple sweater because he'd been working from home. The moment he saw Isabella, covered head to toe in mud, shaking, crying, hands wrapped around her pregnant belly, his entire face changed. It went from concern to something cold and lethal. He moved fast, wrapping his coat around Isabella's shoulders, even though it would be ruined. His hands were gentle on her face, wiping mud away, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did someone attack you?" "No. Yes. Isabella couldn't get the words out. She was shaking too hard.
James guided her into the car, speaking quietly to his security team. "Get me the CCTV footage from this street. Every camera within 2 blocks. Now." Then he climbed in beside Isabella, wrapping her in a blanket that one of the security team had provided, holding her carefully, like she was made of glass. "Tell me what happened." So Isabella told him everything. The Maserati, the puddle, Lucas's face, the words, barren, defective, damaged goods, "You'll kill this baby too." The way he'd laughed, the way Sienna had laughed, the way they'd driven off like they'd just won something. James didn't interrupt. He listened, one hand gently on Isabella's shoulder, the other on her belly where their daughter was still moving, still alive, still growing despite what Lucas had said. But Isabella could feel the tension in his body, could see the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes went distant and calculating. When Isabella finished, James was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice perfectly calm, perfectly controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying. "His name is Lucas Rodriguez?" "Yes." "And he owns Rodriguez Properties?" Isabella nodded, confused about how James knew that. James pulled out his phone. He made one call. "David, it's James Ashford. I need everything you have on Lucas Rodriguez. Rodriguez Properties, London. Every holding, every loan, every contract, every business partner. Personal life, affairs, legal issues, tax records. I want it in 2 hours. Yes, everything. And David, find me the video. Thornhill Avenue, Manchester, 20 minutes ago. Someone filmed it. I want it." He hung up, made another call. "Dad, are you still at the office? I need you to pull our files on Rodriguez Properties. Yes, that Rodriguez. The loans, all of them. I'll be there in an hour." "Yes, it's personal, very personal." Isabella stared at him. "James, what are you—" "That man humiliated you," James said quietly. "He said those things about you, about our daughter, while you were standing in the street covered in filth. He laughed. Do you understand what he did, Isabella? He tried to break you, in public, while you're carrying our child." His hand moved to her face, gentle despite the fury in his eyes. "No one touches my family. No one hurts my wife. No one threatens my daughter. And absolutely no one gets to tell you that you're anything less than extraordinary." But James, he doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know I know. That's what makes this perfect. The video went viral in 4 hours. Someone had filmed the whole thing. Lucas's Maserati deliberately splashing mud on a pregnant woman. The laughter, the window rolling down. You couldn't hear the words, but you could see Lucas's face, see the cruelty in it, see Isabella standing there soaked and shaking. The caption read, "Rich man in Maserati splashes pregnant woman for fun. Anyone know who this psychopath is?" 20 million views in the first day. The comments were savage. This is someone's wife, someone's baby. What kind of monster does this? I hope he loses everything. Then someone recognized Lucas from a business article. That's Lucas Rodriguez, property developer, Rodriguez Properties. Then someone else recognized Isabella from a charity event photo where she'd been standing beside James. Wait, that's Isabella Ashford, James Ashford's wife, William Ashford's daughter-in-law. The story detonated like a bomb. Property developer humiliates billionaire's pregnant daughter-in-law. Every newspaper in Britain ran it. The Daily Mail, The Guardian, The Telegraph, BBC News did a segment on it. Social media exploded. Lucas's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next morning. His PR team panicking, his lawyers panicking, his board members panicking, his investors panicking. By noon, 3 things had happened. Ashford Capital called in £280 million in commercial real estate loans, due immediately. Barclays and HSBC, following Ashford's lead, called in another £190 million. Lucas's credit lines were frozen. Lucas called his father-in-law, a minor government official who'd helped him secure planning permissions. The call went to voicemail. He called his banker. "We're reassessing our relationship with Rodriguez Properties at this time." He called his largest investor. "We've decided to divest from the property sector." In 24 hours, Lucas Rodriguez's net worth dropped from £42 million to negative £60 million. His stock crashed. His board of directors held an emergency meeting. By the end of it, Lucas was out, voted out of his own company, effective immediately. But Lucas still didn't understand what was happening. He thought it was the video, the bad publicity, a temporary crisis he could manage. He had no idea about the phone calls William Ashford had made, the quiet conversations with bank presidents, the polite suggestions that perhaps Rodriguez Properties wasn't the kind of client they wanted associated with their institutions. He had no idea that his destruction had been calculated, deliberate, surgical. 3 weeks after the incident on Thornhill Avenue, William Ashford stood before 300 of Britain's most powerful people at the Royal Charity Gala for Children's Healthcare. The event was broadcast live on BBC One and Sky News, 8 million people watching. Isabella stood beside James on the stage, wearing an emerald silk gown that perfectly showcased her 7-month pregnancy. She was glowing, radiant, her hand resting on her belly, where Sophia was kicking strong and steady. William was 72, silver-haired, commanding, the kind of man who'd built an empire through intelligence and integrity. He'd been knighted by the Queen. He'd advised 3 prime ministers. When he spoke, people listened. "Tonight," William said, his voice filling the grand ballroom, "I'm honored to announce something personal. My son, James, and his wife, Isabella, are expecting their first child, my first grandchild, a daughter." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Isabella felt James's hand squeeze her gently. William wasn't finished. "This child represents everything my family values: compassion, integrity, respect for others, regardless of their circumstances, which is why I want to be absolutely clear about something." His voice hardened just slightly. "Anyone who would harm my family, who would disrespect my daughter-in-law, who would endanger her or her child, will face the full consequences of their actions. We do not tolerate cruelty. We do not tolerate abuse, and absolutely no one gets to tell you that you're anything less than extraordinary."
Everyone in that room knew exactly what he was talking about. The video had 35 million views by now. Lucas Rodriguez's name was infamous. William raised his glass. To Isabella, to James, to family, and to the principle that character, not wealth, determines who we are. The room stood, 300 of the most powerful people in Britain, raising their glasses to Isabella, the primary school teacher from Manchester who'd married a billionaire's son but kept teaching because she loved the kids, the woman Lucas called worthless. Lucas watched it from a cramped one-bedroom flat in South London. His Maserati had been repossessed. His Mayfair penthouse was being seized by the banks. Sienna had left him for a hedge fund manager 2 weeks ago, taking the designer clothes Lucas had bought her. His company was gone. His reputation was destroyed. He had £1,700 in his bank account and a growing pile of legal bills.
He sat on a second-hand sofa and watched Isabella, his ex-wife, the woman he'd called barren and defective, standing in front of the most powerful people in Britain, carrying a healthy baby, loved and protected and honored. And Lucas finally understood. Isabella hadn't just moved on. She'd married into power. She'd become untouchable. And the man beside her, James Ashford, the man Lucas had never heard of, the man Isabella had chosen after him, had systematically destroyed Lucas's entire life in 3 weeks without ever meeting him face to face. It wasn't the video that ruined Lucas, it was the phone calls, the quiet conversations, the loans called in, the credit frozen, the investors walking away, the banks deciding simultaneously that Rodriguez Properties was too risky, too controversial, too associated with the kind of cruelty that people like the Ashfords didn't tolerate. Lucas had splashed mud on a pregnant woman and laughed. He'd done it because it felt good, because he'd wanted to prove that he'd won, that he'd moved on, that Isabella meant nothing to him. He'd done it because some part of him was still angry that she'd survived their divorce, that she'd had the audacity to be pregnant when he'd spent 3 years telling her she was infertile, that she'd found someone else when he'd told her no one would want her. He'd done it because he was cruel, and cruelty has consequences. 4 months later, Isabella gave birth to Sophia Rose Ashford at Portland Hospital in London. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy, perfect, screaming with powerful lungs that promised she'd inherited her mother's strength. James was there, holding Isabella's hand through every contraction, crying when Sophia was placed on Isabella's chest. William was there, meeting his granddaughter, calling her his little warrior. Isabella held her daughter, this impossible miracle, and thought about Matteo, her son who died, the baby Lucas had refused to hold, the baby whose death Lucas had used as a weapon for 3 years. She thought about the doctors who'd told her she'd never carry another pregnancy to term. She thought about standing in that street, covered in mud, hearing Lucas say she'd kill this baby too. And then she looked at Sophia, alive and perfect and screaming, and she knew. She'd survived. She'd healed. She'd found a man who loved her not despite her brokenness, but including all of it. She'd carried this baby through fear and doubt and trauma, and she'd won. Not because she'd destroyed Lucas, though he'd destroyed himself just fine, but because she refused to believe him when he said she was worthless. Lucas Rodriguez ended up taking a job as a property consultant, making £58,000 a year. He moved to Liverpool, away from London, away from the memories. He never married again. Sienna didn't take him back. His father, once proud of his son's success, barely spoke to him. The Maserati was long gone, sold at auction. The designer suits were replaced with ones from Marks & Spencer. He saw Isabella's picture sometimes, in magazines, at charity events. Isabella Ashford, beloved teacher and philanthropist, the woman who'd established the Matteo Foundation, providing support for families who'd lost babies. The woman who donated £2 million of her own inheritance to children's hospitals. The woman who'd used her pain to heal others. And Lucas understood, finally, that he hadn't just lost Isabella. He'd lost the chance to be the kind of man who deserved her. He'd chosen cruelty over compassion, status over substance, victory over love, and the universe had presented him with the bill. There's a verse in the Bible, Galatians 6:7, that says, "Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Lucas sowed humiliation and reaped destruction. He sowed cruelty and reaped isolation. He sowed contempt and reaped consequences so complete they left him with nothing but the memory of who he used to be before he decided that money made him better than the woman he'd promised to love. Isabella sowed resilience and reaped a family. She sowed compassion and reaped love. She sowed dignity and reaped a daughter who would grow up knowing that her mother was a woman who survived, who refused to break, who turned her trauma into purpose. Sometimes revenge isn't something you seek. Sometimes it's just living well enough, long enough, to watch the people who hurt you realize what they lost. And sometimes karma doesn't need your help. It just needs time and a billionaire's phone number. If this story touched something in you, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories that remind us that character, not wealth, determines our legacy. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to remember that broken things can heal, that cruel people face consequences, and sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to stay broken. God bless you.